Jake had always thought of himself as an average guy. He lived in a small town in the middle of nowhere, working at a local repair shop. He liked the quiet life, no big surprises, no drama. But that was before the day the spaceship crashed. It wasn't a big explosion or a fiery crash that alerted him. It was the sound, the strange hum that vibrated the air like a distant thunderstorm. Jake was working on a motorcycle in his shop when he first heard it. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but the hum grew louder, shaking the windows in their frames. Then out of nowhere, a bright light flashed across the sky, and the ground beneath him shook as the spaceship landed in a nearby field. He dropped the wrench and ran outside, his heart pounding in his chest. The bright blue light from the ship bathed the entire area, making the world feel like it was under a surreal spotlight. He could barely make out the shape of the ship, sleek, metallic, and nothing like any aircraft he'd ever seen. It wasn't like anything from Earth. Jake hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. The sensible part of him told him to go back inside and call the authorities. But the part of him that had always been curious, the part that had spent hours reading science fiction books, told him to go closer. With a deep breath, he jogged toward the ship. As he neared, the hatch on the side of the craft slowly opened. A strange, low sound echoed from inside, like the ship itself was breathing. Jake froze for a second, but then his legs moved as if they had a mind of their own. His eyes darted from the ship to the bright light and back again, but before he could process anything more, a figure stepped out. She was tall, much taller than any woman he had ever seen. Her skin was a shimmering blue like the ocean on a summer day. Her eyes were bright and glowing, the color shifting from deep purple to a light violet, depending on how the light hit them. She wore an outfit that looked both elegant and intimidating. Sharp lines, metallic armor-like material, but with delicate details that made her seem almost otherworldly. She walked with grace as if her very presence bent the air around her. There was no doubt in Jake's mind that this wasn't a human. This was something alien. The woman stopped just a few feet from Jake, her eyes locking onto his. A moment passed before she spoke, her voice melodic but firm, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 years of command. "You are human, correct?" she asked, tilting her head slightly as if studying him. Jake swallowed, unsure of what to say. He had no idea how to respond to such a situation. The words that came out of his mouth were simple, though they felt foolish. "Yeah, I'm human," he replied, his voice sounding smaller than he had intended. The alien woman nodded as if she already knew that answer. She took a step forward, her eyes scanning him with more intensity now. "I have been sent here for a purpose. You are the one I need." Jake blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I am Zira," she said, her voice unshaken. "A princess from the Zoran system. My people are dying and only a human can save us." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You want me to save you? What do you mean? How?" Zira's expression softened, though there was a hardness to her eyes that he couldn't ignore. She took another step closer to him. "It's a ritual, a bonding ritual, to be precise. For 3 consecutive nights I need to be with a human. Only then can I return to my people. Only then will we survive." Jake's mind raced. A bonding ritual? What was she talking about? He had never heard of anything like this. Was this some kind of alien marriage proposal? The thought made his stomach twist in confusion. "But why me?" Jake asked, his voice shaky. "I'm just a guy. I'm not special." Zira's gaze didn't waver. "Your kind has something that we lack. Strength, resilience, the ability to bond in a way that our species cannot. It's the only way for us to continue. You are needed." Jake's head spun with the weight of what she was saying. A bonding ritual? He couldn't even begin to wrap his head around it. But then, something in her eyes made him pause. Despite everything, despite the alien nature of the woman in front of him, despite the ridiculousness of her claim, there was a vulnerability to her. She wasn't threatening, or cold, or calculating. She was desperate. She looked like someone who had no other choice. I don't know if I can help you, Jake said slowly. I don't know what you're asking. Zira's gaze softened even further, and for the first time there was a hint of something that could almost be called fear in her eyes. If you do not, all will be lost. My people have no other hope. I have come here, and I have no choice. Please, you must agree. Jake took a deep breath. His mind was telling him to walk away, to leave this bizarre situation behind and never look back. But something inside him tugged at him, telling him to stay, to help, to take a chance on this impossible request. After a moment of silence, Jake finally nodded. All right, I'll do it. Zira's eyes flashed with what could almost be described as relief, but there was still an intensity in her expression. Thank you. The air between them was charged with a strange electric tension, and Jake's pulse raced. What had he just agreed to? He had no idea what was going to happen next, but he had just made a decision that would change his life, forever. Before he could speak again, Zira turned toward the spaceship. Follow me, she said, her voice calm but firm. The ritual begins now. Jake had never been more confused in his life. Less than an hour ago, he was fixing a motorcycle in his small, quiet workshop, and now here he was, following an alien princess into a spaceship. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into. The ship was massive on the inside, much larger than its outer appearance had suggested. It looked like a palace, with walls made of shining, silver-like material that reflected the soft, pulsing lights above them. There was no visible control panel or machinery, just smooth, flowing curves and intricate patterns etched into the walls. It was unlike anything Jake had ever seen, and for a moment he felt small in this world of advanced technology. Zira led him down a long hallway, her steps echoing softly in the silence of the ship. The faint hum of the ship's systems buzzed in the background, making everything seem even more surreal. As they reached a large room at the end of the hall, Zira stopped and turned to face him. This is where the ritual will take place, she said softly. Her voice was calm, but Jake could sense an urgency behind it. She didn't seem as cold now, but rather determined. The room was spacious, circular, with a high ceiling that seemed to go on forever. The center was dominated by a large platform, covered with what looked like smooth blue crystals that pulsed with a soft glow. Jake couldn't help but stare at them. They gave off a calming, almost hypnotic light, but there was something about them that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Zira walked to the edge of the platform, her long, elegant fingers brushing over the crystal-like surface. She turned to Jake. This is the heart of the ritual, she said, her tone now more serious. I need you to stand here. The bonding process begins with the energy in this room. Jake swallowed hard. He was in over his head, but he couldn't back out now. What do I have to do? He asked, his voice rough. You don't have to do anything, Zira replied, her eyes glowing brighter. You just need to be present. The connection will come naturally. Jake had 1,000 questions, but he didn't know where to start. All he could do was nod. He stepped forward and positioned himself in the center of the platform, standing where Zira had indicated. The glow from the crystals grew stronger as he took his place. He could feel the warmth from them, but it wasn't uncomfortable, more like the gentle heat from a campfire. Still, there was an underlying tension in the air, like something powerful was about to happen. Zira stepped up beside him, and without a word, she extended her hand to him. Jake hesitated for a moment, unsure whether he should take it. But then, seeing the look in her eyes, the same look that had been in her eyes when she first landed on Earth, he reached out and took her hand. The moment their hands touched, a jolt of energy shot through him. It wasn't painful, but it was intense. His body went stiff and he had to fight the urge to pull away. It felt like every nerve in his body was alive, sparking with heat. His heart began to race as the energy moved from his fingertips up his arm and through his chest. Zira closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, as if she was focusing on the energy as well. "Relax," she said softly. "Let it flow." But Jake couldn't relax. The energy was overwhelming, filling his body with a strange mixture of warmth and pressure. He gritted his teeth, trying to endure it. Was this the bonding she had mentioned? If so, it was far more intense than he could have ever imagined. He glanced at Zira, but her eyes were still closed, her expression focused. She was calm, but Jake could see the faint shimmer of sweat on her forehead. She wasn't immune to the energy either. It was affecting both of them, just in different ways. As the energy built, Jake felt his body start to tremble. His muscles tightened, his hands shaking where they held Zira's. The pressure inside him continued to grow, like his chest was about to burst from the inside out. But then, just as quickly as it had come, the energy suddenly stopped. Jake gasped for air, his heart thundering in his chest. "That was just the first phase," Zira said, her voice softer now but still steady. She didn't seem nearly as shaken as he felt, but there was a deep intensity in her eyes that made him feel like he had just been. Jake had never imagined that his life would take such a strange turn. The first night of the ritual had been overwhelming, an experience that pushed him to his physical limits. The energy, the connection, the strange bond that had formed between him and Zira, it was all too much to understand. But it was real. Now, as he stood in the same room, the air still thick with the lingering effects of the first night, he knew the second phase would be even harder. Zira had told him as much. The energy from the first night had been intense, but nothing compared to what was coming. Jake had rested, but the anticipation of the next phase kept him awake. His thoughts raced as he tried to prepare himself. He had never been a particularly strong man, but something about the alien princess made him want to be stronger. He didn't know if it was the ritual itself or the way Zira had looked at him, like he was more than just a human, like he was important. When the evening came, Zira entered the room, her presence filling the space with a strange mix of power and grace. She looked even more beautiful than before, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the ship. "You're ready for the second night?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with something deeper, something Jake couldn't quite place. Jake swallowed. "I think so," he replied, trying to sound confident, though his heart was pounding in his chest. Zira stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. "The second phase will be different from the first. The energy will be stronger. It will test your endurance, your willpower, but I believe you can handle it." Jake nodded, though he wasn't sure if he believed her. He didn't feel strong. He felt small, like a man who was about to face something far beyond his ability. But Zira seemed so sure, so confident. Maybe he could do this. Maybe he could survive whatever she was about to put him through. Without another word, Zira reached out and gently placed her hand on his chest. The moment her skin made contact with his, a strange warmth spread through his body, much like the first night, but this time, it felt different. The warmth seemed to come from within him, as though the energy wasn't just entering his body. It was awakening something deep inside him. He gasped, his chest rising and falling quickly as the energy began to build. It wasn't painful, but it was intense. It started in his chest, expanding outward, and soon his whole body was trembling with the force of it. He could feel his muscles tightening, his heart racing. He gritted his teeth, trying to hold on, trying to remain steady. Zira's voice broke through his concentration. "Focus, Jake. Don't fight it. Let it flow through you." He wanted to fight it. He wanted to push it away, to escape from this overwhelming sensation. But he knew he couldn't. He had already agreed to this. There was no turning back now. So he did what Zira had asked. He tried to focus. The energy pulsed, a deep, rhythmic beat that matched the pounding of his heart. It flowed through his veins, a warm current that seemed to reach every corner of his body. As it moved, it seemed to fill him with power, filling the empty spaces inside him, making him feel alive in a way he had never felt before. Jake's vision blurred as the energy intensified, and for a moment, he felt like he was floating, like his body wasn't his own. The world around him faded, leaving only the sensation of power coursing through him. He wanted to scream, to let out the raw emotion that surged inside him, but all he could do was hold on. Zira's face remained calm, her expression focused as she maintained contact with him. She was guiding him, helping him through the process. Jake didn't understand how, but somehow she seemed to know exactly what he needed. Her touch was gentle, yet firm, like she was anchoring him to the world when everything inside him wanted to drift away. "Breathe, Jake," Zira instructed softly. "In and out. Let the energy settle inside you." He followed her instructions, though it was difficult to focus on anything other than the overwhelming heat that seemed to envelop his body. But slowly, he began to control his breathing, taking deep, steady breaths. The energy seemed to respond to his efforts, gradually calming down, though it still pulsed within him like a steady drumbeat. "Good," Zira murmured, her voice low and soothing. "You're stronger than I thought." Jake wasn't sure if he was stronger or just too stubborn to quit. He wasn't sure how much longer he could take this, but he didn't want to disappoint her. He didn't want to be weak. He couldn't fail her now. The energy continued to flow through him, but now it wasn't just a force, it was a connection. Jake could feel Zira's presence within him, like their minds were linked, like they were sharing the same breath, the same pulse. It was more than just the ritual. There was something deeper here, something Jake couldn't explain. As the energy grew stronger, Jake felt his body beginning to change. His muscles burned, but in a way that felt empowering. He felt more alive than he had ever felt before. More capable, more powerful. The exhaustion from the previous night seemed to disappear, replaced by a strength he didn't know he had. But it wasn't just his body that was changing. He could feel something else shifting, something inside his heart, inside his mind. He had always been a quiet, reserved man, but now he felt bold, confident, like he could take on the world. It was as if the energy had awakened something within him that he never knew existed. Zira's eyes flickered, and she looked at him with a new intensity. There was something different in her gaze now, something that made Jake's heart race, even faster. He had never seen her look at him like this before. Was it admiration, affection? He couldn't tell, but he could feel it in his bones. "You're changing," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. Jake didn't know how to respond. He was changing, yes, but not just physically. He felt like a different person, someone stronger, someone more powerful. But was it the ritual? Or was it something else? Something that had to do with his connection to Zira? The energy began to subside, and with it, the intense heat that had been building inside him slowly faded. He collapsed to his knees, breathless and exhausted, but, with a strange sense of accomplishment, he had made it through the second night. He had survived. Zira knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You did well," she said, her voice soft and full of approval. Jake nodded, still trying to catch his breath. "I didn't think I could handle it," he admitted. "But I don't know. I feel different now." Zira smiled, though it was a small, quiet smile. "You've passed the second phase. You're stronger than I ever expected. And the bond between us, it is growing, Jake." Jake looked at her, feeling a warmth spread through him again, not from the ritual, but from something deeper. "I don't know what's happening between us, but I feel it too." Zira's gaze softened, and for a moment the intensity that had filled the room seemed to vanish. They were just two people, two beings from different worlds, sharing a moment of understanding. But even as the moment stretched on, Jake knew that the third night, the final night, was yet to come. And it would be the hardest of them all. The energy between them had only just begun to build, and he had no idea how far it would go. But one thing was certain. Whatever happened, he wasn't going to walk away. He couldn't. As he looked at Zira, he knew that this was only the beginning of something much larger than either of them could have imagined. Jake had never felt more exhausted in his life. The energy from the second night had been overwhelming, pushing him past his limits and leaving him with an ache deep in his bones. But as he lay on the floor of the ship's circular chamber, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of accomplishment. He had made it through the second phase, but he knew that the hardest part of the ritual was still ahead of him. Zira had told him that the third night would be the most difficult, the most intense. She had warned him that the final phase of the bonding ritual would test more than just his physical strength. It would test his heart, his mind, and his soul. As the hours passed, Jake tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept racing, spinning with questions that had no answers. What was the ritual really about? What was the bond that was growing between him and Zara? Was it just a side effect of the energy, or was there something more? He had never been one to believe in love at first sight, but everything he was feeling now, everything that had happened over the last few nights, seemed to suggest otherwise. His connection with Zara was growing, and with each passing moment he found himself more drawn to her. It wasn't just the ritual. It was something deeper, something that he couldn't explain. But what if she didn't feel the same way? What if she was just using him for the ritual? The thought made his chest tighten. He didn't want to be a pawn in some alien game. He wanted to believe that there was more to their connection than just a ritual, but he couldn't shake the doubt. Just as his thoughts were beginning to spiral, Zira entered the room, her presence filling the space like a calm breeze. She was still as beautiful and graceful as ever, but there was a quiet intensity in her eyes now, something that spoke of the gravity of what was about to happen. "Jake," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of concern, "are you ready for the final phase?" Jake sat up slowly, his body sore but his mind alert. He looked at Zira, trying to read her expression. Was she nervous too? Or was she just as confident as she had been before? "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady despite the anxiety he was feeling. Zira nodded and walked toward him. "You've all read." The morning after the final phase of the ritual, Jake woke to the soft glow of the ship's lights filtering through the walls. His body felt drained, as though every ounce of energy had been used up during the night. The intensity of the ritual had left him exhausted, yet there was a strange sense of peace within him. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him had shifted. Something important had happened, and he was no longer the same man who had first met Zira days ago. He sat up slowly, his muscles aching but not in the painful way they had the previous night. It was a strange, soothing kind of ache, as though his body was adapting to something new. Zira was sitting nearby, her eyes closed, meditating. Her presence seemed calm and reassuring, but there was a quiet strength to her now, something that Jake hadn't noticed before. She had always been strong, yes, but there was a different kind of power in her now. It wasn't just her alien abilities or her status as a princess. It was something more profound, something that Jake could sense without fully understanding. As Jake stood up and stretched, Zira opened her eyes and smiled at him. It was a small smile, but it held warmth and appreciation. "You're awake," she said softly. "How do you feel?" Jake paused for a moment, considering her question. "Different," he said finally. "But in a good way. I feel stronger and strangely at peace. I can't explain it, but I'm not the same." Zira nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "The bond between us has changed you, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. The ritual was meant to forge a connection, and now, you and I are linked in ways you may not fully understand yet." Jake's heart skipped a beat. The bond. He had felt it. Yes, felt it growing stronger with every passing night. But hearing Zira speak of it so calmly made him realize just how much had happened between them. It wasn't just some alien ritual. It was something far deeper. They were connected. "But what does this mean for us?" Jake asked, his voice quieter now. "The ritual is over. We've done what you came here to do. So, what now?" Zira stood and walked toward him, her movements fluid and graceful, like she was in perfect harmony with her surroundings. "What happens next is up to us," she replied. "The ritual is complete. but the bond we share remains. It's not something that can be undone, and now we have to decide what to do with it." Jake was silent for a moment, his thoughts swirling in a million different directions. The last few days had felt like a whirlwind, a series of events that had pushed him to his limits and beyond. He had gone from an ordinary mechanic in a small town to a participant in an ancient alien ritual, and now he was bonded to an alien princess in a way he couldn't even fully comprehend. He looked at Zira, her face calm but her eyes filled with something more. "You told me the ritual would help you return to your people," he said. "Now that it's over, are you going to leave?" Zira's gaze softened, and she took a step closer to him. "I will return. Yes," she said quietly, "but not in the way I expected. You have changed me, Jake. This bond, it's stronger than anything I've ever known. It's not just a connection between two individuals, it's a bond between our worlds. I don't know what that means yet, but it's something I must understand." Jake's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't just talking about leaving, she was talking about him, about their connection, about something that went beyond the ritual. "And what about me?" Jake asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Where do I fit into all of this?" Zira reached out, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "You are a part of me now, Jake. You always will be. The bond we share is not just a physical one, it's emotional, spiritual. It's something that ties us together no matter where we are, no matter what happens next." Jake could feel the weight of her words, the sincerity in them. He had always thought of himself as just an ordinary man, someone who lived a simple life, who worked hard and kept to himself. But now he was part of something much larger, something he couldn't have imagined even a week ago. "I don't know what the future holds for us," Zira continued, her voice gentle but firm. "But I know one thing for certain. I don't want to leave without you. I don't know if I'm ready to face my people yet, but I do know that you're a part of my life now. And I need you, Jake." Her words hit him like a wave, crashing over him with a force he hadn't expected. Zira, the powerful alien princess, needed him. The realization made his chest tighten. He wasn't just some tool to be used for a ritual. He was important to her. He had become more than just a human. He had become a partner, a companion, someone who had helped her through one of the most important moments of her life. Jake felt a surge of emotions he hadn't known he was capable of. Love, confusion, fear, hope, all of it mixed together, creating a whirlwind inside him. He wanted to say something, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. "I don't know what this means for us either," Jake said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "But I know that I can't just walk away from this, from you. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to be a part of it. With you." Zira's face softened and she smiled at him, her eyes full of warmth and something deeper. Something that felt like trust. Like hope. "Then we'll face it together, Jake. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." As they stood there, the bond between them pulsing gently, Jake realized that everything had changed. The man he had been before, the simple mechanic, no longer existed. He was now part of something much larger than himself, part of a bond that spanned worlds, a bond that had been forged in the depths of the ritual. And as he looked into Zira's eyes, he knew that he had found something he never expected to find, a connection so deep, so real that nothing would ever break it. No matter where their paths took them, they would always be tied together. And that, he realized, was more than enough. Zira turned away from him, her hand still resting lightly on his arm. "We must prepare," she said, her voice low but filled with purpose. "The next phase of my journey begins now. I will return to my people, but I will not go alone. I want you by my side, Jake. Will you come with me?" Jake didn't hesitate. He took a deep breath, his mind clear and his heart full. "Yes," he said, his voice firm. "I'll go with you. Wherever you need to go, I'll be there." Zira smiled, and for the first time since their meeting, Jake saw a glimmer of true happiness in her eyes. "Then we are ready." And with that, they stood together, the bond between them stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the future held. For them, the ship hummed softly as it made its way through the vastness of space. The stars outside the windows sparkled like distant jewels, and Jake couldn't help but marvel at the view. It felt surreal, like he was living in a dream. Just a few days ago, he had been working on motorcycles in his small, quiet shop. Now, he was on an alien ship, traveling through space with a woman who was more than just a princess. She was his bond, his connection, and something much more. Zira was standing at the front of the ship, her gaze focused on the stars ahead. She had been silent for a while, lost in thought, but Jake knew she wasn't distant. She was always thinking, always planning for the future. They had spoken at length about what would come next, but the truth was, neither of them knew what awaited them. The only thing they were certain of was that they were no longer just two separate beings from different worlds. They were partners, in every sense of the word. Jake walked up to her, standing beside her at the window. The soft hum of the ship was the only sound between them. For a moment neither of them spoke, both lost in their own thoughts, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. They didn't need to say anything to know that they were in this together, no matter what lay ahead. "You've been quiet," Jake said after a while, his voice gentle. "Are you okay?" Zira turned to look at him, a small smile appearing on her lips. There was something in her eyes, something that spoke of a deep, emotional bond. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice steady. I don't know what to expect. Everything has changed so quickly." Jake nodded. He understood. It had been only a few days, but those days had been filled with more than he could have ever imagined. The ritual, the bond, the energy, it had all happened so fast. They were now connected in a way that neither of them fully understood, and the weight of that connection was beginning to settle on both of them. "I feel the same way," Jake admitted. "I never thought any of this would happen. But I'm not scared, not anymore. I trust you, Zira." Zira's gaze softened, and for a moment she looked vulnerable, something Jake hadn't seen before. She had always been strong, composed, but in that moment she was more human than he had ever seen her. "I trust you too," she said quietly. "More than I ever thought I could." Jake felt his heart swell at her words. He knew that their bond was strong, but hearing her say it out loud made it feel more real, more tangible. It wasn't just a connection formed by the ritual. It was a connection that had grown between them, one that had deepened over time. They had shared something that went beyond physical touch, beyond energy. They had shared their fears, their hopes, and their futures. The silence between them grew, comfortable and understanding. Neither of them needed to speak to know what the other was feeling. The bond was there, a constant, invisible thread that tied them together, no matter the distance between them. "So what now?" Jake asked after a long pause. "We're heading to your people, right?" Zira nodded. "Yes, B.